There is a particular kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. It is the tiredness that comes from years of reaching, years of adjusting, recalibrating, and showing up in ways that were just slightly off from who you actually are. Not because you were weak, but because you were taught that effort, in all its forms, was the answer. Try harder, be more, give more, and eventually, what you want will come. Most men in their 40s, 50s, and beyond carry this fatigue quietly. It does not announce itself. It settles in the background, like a low-frequency hum you stop noticing until the room finally goes silent. You have chased careers, and some of you caught them. You have chased relationships, and some of those you caught too. And yet here you are, reading the gap between what you expected that catching to feel like and what it actually delivered. That gap is not a sign that you chose wrong. It is a sign that the strategy itself was flawed from the beginning. The culture hands men a very specific operating instruction. Pursue relentlessly, demonstrate value constantly, and never let up. In the context of attraction especially, this instruction runs deep. Men are conditioned to believe that desire must be performed, that interest must be proven, and that attention from others is something you earn through persistent effort. And for a while, that framework appears to work, until one day it doesn't, until the effort starts costing more than it returns, and you find yourself exhausted not by failure, but by the relentlessness of trying to be chosen. What no one tells you is that this exhaustion is not a weakness, it is information. It is your nervous system, your experience, and your accumulated wisdom telling you that a different way is not only possible, it is overdue. The question worth sitting with is this: what does that different way actually look like? Not apathy, not giving up, something more precise than that, something more grounded in who you have actually become. Before we go any further, let's be precise about something. This is not about playing hard to get. It is not about manufactured distance or calculated silence designed to trigger interest. Those are techniques, and techniques are just chasing, wearing a different coat. What we are talking about runs considerably deeper than that. When a man chases, what he is actually broadcasting is a specific psychological signal, not the signal he intends to send, which is usually something like strength, desire, or devotion. The signal he actually sends is this: I have assessed my own value, and I have concluded that it is insufficient on its own, so I am supplementing it with effort. People feel that signal before they can name it. This is not mystical. It is neurological. Human beings are wired to read internal states through behavioral patterns, micro-expressions, pacing, and energy. When a man is in pursuit mode, there is a particular quality to his attention. It is slightly too focused, slightly too available, slightly too eager to land. And the person receiving that attention does not think to themselves, this man is chasing me. They simply feel, without quite knowing why, that something is off, that the dynamic is uneven, and uneven dynamics do not generate attraction. They generate either guilt or control, and sometimes both. The deeper psychological problem with chasing is what it does to the man himself. Every time you reach towards something or someone from a place of perceived lack, you reinforce an internal narrative. The narrative that says your presence alone is not enough, that you must do something, offer something, perform something in order to deserve what you want. Repeat that pattern across months and years, and it does not just affect your relationships. It reshapes your entire sense of self. Stillness in this context is not coldness, it is not indifference, and it is not the emotional unavailability that damaged men sometimes wear as armor. Stillness is the external expression of an internal settledness. It is what a man looks like when he has stopped needing external outcomes to confirm his worth. And it registers in the psychology of attraction as something remarkably rare. Because most men, regardless of age, are still running the pursuit program, still performing, still supplementing. The man who has genuinely stopped doing that does not need to announce it. It is simply visible in the way he occupies a room, holds a conversation, and responds or does not respond to pressure. There is a concept in psychology, sometimes referred to as non-attachment, and it is frequently misunderstood as not caring. What it actually describes is caring deeply while remaining uncontrolled by outcome. A man can want a relationship, want connection, want to be chosen, and still operate from a place of internal sufficiency. Those two things are not in conflict. The conflict only arises when wanting slides into needing and needing slides into chasing. Understanding this at an intellectual level is a reasonable starting point. But intellectual understanding alone does not change behavior, and it certainly does not change the way you show up in a room. For that, something more fundamental has to shift. Not your tactics, your identity. Identity is not a feeling, it is a structure. And like any structure, it is not something you wait to receive. It is something you build deliberately from the inside out. Most men, when they think about confidence, treat it as an emotional state that arrives under the right conditions. When the relationship is going well, when the career is solid, when the body looks the way they want it to, when life cooperates. They are waiting for external circumstances to generate an internal feeling, and then planning to act from that feeling. That sequence is precisely backwards. And it is one of the central reasons so many experienced, intelligent men still find themselves chasing, despite knowing better. The man who does not chase is not operating from a better feeling. He is operating from a clearer structure, and that structure has several distinct qualities worth examining honestly. The first is his relationship with his own time. A man who chases treats his time as something to spend in the direction of what he wants. A man who does not chase treats his time as something that reflects what he values. These sound similar. They are not. One posture is acquisitive, the other is declarative. When your time is genuinely occupied by things that matter to you, by work that challenges you, by friendships that carry real weight, by physical practices, creative pursuits, or quiet that you have actually learned to use, you stop being available in the anxious, formless way that undermines attraction. Not because you are strategically unavailable, but because you are actually present somewhere else. The second quality is his relationship with standards, not the performance of standards, which is a form of posturing, but genuine internalized standards about how he spends his energy and who receives his attention. A man without real standards will pursue almost anything that shows initial interest because interest itself feels like validation. A man with genuine standards experiences interest from others as pleasant but not urgent because he is already in the process of evaluating whether that interest is worth his reciprocation. That evaluation is not arrogance, it is self-respect made operational. The third quality, and perhaps the most difficult to develop, is emotional regulation under ambiguity. Most of the chasing men do is not driven by desire. It is driven by discomfort. The discomfort of not knowing where they stand. The discomfort of silence after a conversation that felt significant. The discomfort of uncertainty in a dynamic that matters to them. Chasing is frequently an anxiety management strategy disguised as romantic pursuit. The man who has developed a genuine tolerance for ambiguity, who can sit with not knowing and remain functional, grounded, and undistracted, does not need to chase, because the discomfort that drives chasing has lost its grip on him. None of these qualities are personality traits you either have or you don't. They are capacities, and capacities are developed through sustained, honest practice. The man who has a full relationship with his own time built it by making choices repeatedly about where his attention goes. The man with genuine standards developed them by disappointing people, including people he cared about, in service of something he valued more. The man with emotional regulation earned it, usually through experiences that forced him to sit with uncertainty and survive it. This is not a portrait of a perfect man. It is a portrait of a man who has done enough interior work to stop outsourcing his sense of worth to the responses of others. And that man, at 45 or 55 or 62, carries something in his presence that is genuinely uncommon, not manufactured magnetism, something quieter and considerably more durable than that, which raises a question worth sitting with. If this is the man you are capable of becoming, and most men reading this are closer than they think, what exactly has been standing in the way? The patterns that run deepest in a man are rarely the ones he chose. They are the ones that were installed before he had the language to question them. Think about what most men of this generation were taught, directly or indirectly, about how love and worth are obtained. Not through conversation, not through explicit instruction, through observation, through what was rewarded and what was withheld, through watching how the men around them behaved toward women, toward work, toward their own needs. The lesson, repeated in countless variations across childhood and adolescence, was consistent. You earn your place. You demonstrate your value. You prove through effort and provision and persistence that you deserve to be chosen. That is not a character flaw, that is an inheritance. For many men in this age group, the emotional blueprint was set in households where affection was conditional, where approval had to be worked for, and where a man's worth was inseparable from his output. Fathers who expressed love through provision rather than presence, mothers whose attention came and went in ways that felt tied to performance, early romantic experiences that confirmed the belief that effort is what keeps people close. These are not unusual backgrounds. For a significant portion of men over 40, this is simply the water they grew up in. The culture reinforced it at every level. Films, music, and the broader social narrative handed men a single romantic template: pursue relentlessly, overcome resistance, and persistence equals devotion. The man who kept showing up despite rejection was framed as romantic, not dysregulated. The man who withdrew his effort was framed as cold, not boundaried. Generations of men absorbed these scripts not as suggestions but as definitions of what it means to love someone well. And here is where the compassion has to be precise, because this is not an invitation to blame your parents, your culture, or your history for where you currently stand. That framing, while emotionally satisfying in the short term, is its own trap. It replaces one form of helplessness with another. The goal is not to identify who handed you the script. The goal is to recognize that it was a script, that you were handed it before you could evaluate it, and that you have been running it largely on autopilot ever since. Awareness of origin is useful for exactly one reason. It allows you to stop interpreting your patterns as evidence of who you are and start seeing them as evidence of what you learned. Those are fundamentally different things. A man who chases because he was conditioned to equate pursuit with worthiness is not a weak man. He is a man operating from an outdated map in unfamiliar territory. But here is the part that matters most, and it is worth being direct about it. Understanding where a pattern came from does not dismantle it. Insight without reconstruction is just self-aware repetition. The men who actually change are not the ones who understand their conditioning the most clearly. They are the ones who use that understanding as a starting point for building something new, deliberately in its place. That reconstruction is not a passive process, and it does not happen through reflection alone. There is a certain kind of man you have probably encountered at some point in your life. He was not necessarily the loudest in the room, not the best looking, not the youngest, not the one performing the most visibly. But there was something about his presence that registered, a quality of settledness, of someone who had clearly stopped auditioning for approval and was simply, genuinely there. You likely did not analyze it in the moment, you just felt it. And if you are honest, you were drawn to it. That quality is not charisma in the conventional sense. It is not charm, and it is not confidence, as most men have been taught to perform it. It is something closer to completion. The particular gravity that a man develops when he has stopped organizing his life around the need to be chosen and started organizing it around the things he has decided actually matter to him. This is not the exclusive property of exceptional men. It is not reserved for the naturally magnetic, the financially successful, or the ones who figured it out at 30. It is available to any man who is willing to do the interior work honestly and without shortcuts. And in many ways, it belongs more naturally to older men than to younger ones, because it is built from exactly the material that age provides: accumulated experience, hard-won perspective, the particular clarity that comes from having chased enough things to know what chasing actually costs. What changes when a man genuinely internalizes this shift is not just how others respond to him. It is how he moves through his own life. Decisions become cleaner, relationships become more honest. The energy that was previously consumed by pursuit, by monitoring, by the low-grade anxiety of wondering where he stands becomes available for something else entirely. for building, creating, deepening, and living with a quality of presence that most men only access occasionally by accident. This is the long game, and it is the one worth playing. No dramatic transformation is being promised here. No guarantee of outcomes. Only this. The man who stops proving himself becomes, quietly and without announcement, considerably more worth knowing. What you do with that is entirely your own.